Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this handsome purple beast is the new BMW 1 Series. Now, small premium family hatchbacks are nothing new. We've had them since the late 90s when Audi first introduced the first generation A3, and it was an instant hit for them. And Mercedes wanted to get in on some of that action, so they launched the first generation A-Class. Granted, it was definitely aimed at a different demographic, but BMW were nowhere to be seen. They just seemed to be sat in the background twiddling their thumbs and working on cars like the 3 and 5 Series. However, in 2004, they launched the first generation 1 Series, and granted, well, it wasn't really a practical car. I mean, it had very limited rear passenger space and a tiny boot. But that didn't matter because it was an instant hit, because it was rear-wheel drive. So BMW were offering pure driving pleasure in their entry-level small family hatchback, so it was a massive success for the German brand. However, for the third generation of 1 Series, things changed. It went from rear-wheel drive to front-wheel drive, so all of a sudden, all of the rivals in that segment are on a level playing field. So, we've now got the 4th generation 1 Series, and I've had it for a week, and I'm going to answer two big questions. Number one, what's the 1 Series like? And number two, with all of these small premium family hatchbacks being on a level playing field, does the 1 Series still offer pure driving pleasure? Stick with me to find out. Now, when it comes to the 1 Series styling, I personally think that this is a very handsome and good looking car, and I do think BMW have played it safe because it is one of their best sellers. We have seen BMW hit the headlines with some of their controversial styling decisions, particularly around the kidney grille and its size, but on this 1 Series, well, that's actually perfectly proportioned. I mean, that's not going to cause any headlines. In fact, the main headline from this latest generation is that it does look a little bit like a certain Korean car's model, but having lived with the 1 Series this week, I no longer see it. I think this is a really handsome car, and they've got the proportions just right. And I'm not just talking about the kidney grille, I'm talking about when you see the 1 Series in profile. But I do like the little styling touches. We have got the cutout here on the bonnet, just like you see on an M4 or M3, with the BMW badge sitting proudly between it. And I do love the slim headlights as well. You do get LEDs as standard, but I have got the adaptive ones with these blue little inserts that do light up. And then when you lock and unlock the car, it does give you a little dance, and also with the rear tail lights as well. Now, this particular car comes with the M Sport pack, so we got those gorgeous 18-inch alloy wheels. They look the part and they are a bugger to clean. You've also got the red brake calipers as well as some of the little kind of black body panel inserts, like here on the kidney grille, lower down on the front splitter and on the rear diffuser. Granted, that is for show. But I'm waiting till the end now to talk about the main highlight of this car, the Thundernight metallic paint. This is just bloody gorgeous, and I love it. And I've yet to have anyone say a negative thing about the colour of this 1 Series. I think it looks like the bee's knees. Now, granted, yes, in the comments section, I'll probably get some people saying they don't like it, which is absolutely fine. But what I love is that if you were to go to Audi and get the same colour, it costs more than twice as much. So it's kind of great that this metallic purple, or Thundernight, is actually a very reasonably priced paint colour, and I absolutely love that. And yeah, I do love the styling as well, but you let me know in the comment section below. Do you love the styling of the 1 Series, or are there better looking cars in the class? And on that note, I think it's time that we leave the exterior of the 1 Series and we see what it's like on the inside. Sat in the front of the 1 Series, you are greeted with a really comfortable, nicely designed, and actually very sporty feeling interior. And that's because I got the M Sport pack fitted to this car, so it does give you some nice interior sporty touches. Now, when it comes to getting in and out of the 1 Series, it is actually pretty easy, but I will mention that you do sit very low down in the car, and it is actually a very low down hatchback as well. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, I would recommend looking elsewhere. But if you are looking looking at the 1 Series, the one bonus is that you do get a grab handle for the driver as well as the front passenger, so that is something. And then once you sat in the driver's seat, you find that these seats are incredibly comfortable. Again, part of that M Sport pack. They do hold a big bear like me in place, and I do love the shoulder support as well. The only thing I will say is that with my thighs, because I do have quite thick chunky legs, I do feel the side just kind of digging in a little bit, so that's just something to be aware of. Now I have got plenty of electric adjustment, and I also have a memory function as well. That is an optional extra, but I actually have no adjustable lumbar support, so that is a surprise. But when it comes to the steering, I have got both rake and reach adjustment, so getting the perfect driving position is easy, and like I said, you do sit low down. And I will be honest, I haven't missed the lumbar adjustment. It has actually been a very supportive seat, so that is something. And then when it comes to interior quality, this is another highlight in the 1 Series. We got your soft touch plastics here on top of the dash, on top of the doors. We got leatherette here as well, and on the door cards. We got a lovely metal mesh there for the Harman Kardon stereo. Then we got some nice here leather, I think it is leatherette on the seats and on the armrests. But what I like as well is that there's no piano black plastics. It is actually this matte effect plastic, which does give a premium feel. We've got real metal trim here as well on the dash and here on the sides just above the vents, and we've got some of that matte plastic here just underneath the infotainment system. So yeah, when it comes to kind of interior quality, that is actually a highlight. And then just when you get into the 1 Series, it does feel very sporty, it is very comfortable, and I do really like the design. It does feel surprisingly special, considering that this is technically the entry-level BMW. Cubby spaces in the 1 Series, I'm going to say are pretty good, but some rivals do have more space. Now, the door pockets are of a decent size and shape. They are kind of broken up into 2 sections. You can get a medium or possibly large size bottle of drink in there, but surprisingly, they're not lined with any fabric or rubber, so loose items will rattle around a bit. And as I said, it is kind of separated into 2 sections, and it can be a little bit tricky whilst you're driving to get to that rear section, because this handle here does protrude out a little bit, so that's just something to be aware of. And then here on the center console up front, we have got a tray area which is quite high up. It is rubber lined, but it is the perfect size for, say, a card holder, maybe some loose change or your keys. Lower down, we got another rubberized tray area, but this is your wireless charging pad, and it does fit large phones in there, which is very handy. We then have 2 cup holders just behind there, and they are of a decent size and depth. Surprisingly, we got no plastic grippers, so what you might find is that if you do put a can or a coffee cup in there, as you go around a corner, it starts to tip over a little bit. It's not going to, but you do get that kind of half second of panic going through you. Now, the other reason you might get that bit of panic is because your 2 USB-C charging inputs and 12-volt socket are right next to the cup holders, so I would be a little bit paranoid thinking that I might get a bit of splurge of latte or something go into them. So that's just something to be aware of. And then we have got your center armrest, which is actually of a really nice height, so it's perfect for a long journey. And then when you get it open, it does unveil a bit of extra storage. It is rubber lined as well, but some rivals do have more storage underneath the armrest. And then finally, we got the glove box, which the button is actually tucked underneath. And then when you get it open, it unveils an okay sized glove box. Again, rivals out there do have more space. I do like the fact that the book pack is absolutely tiny. And then when you got it open again, you might be surprised to find that there is no fabric lining for the glove box. So it could just be an area where BMW are just trying to save a few pennies, but that's not surprising. We are seeing it with other premium brands as well. So yeah, when it comes to the cubby spaces here in the 1 Series, they are quite good and quirky, but in terms of kind of outright space, yeah, some rivals do it a little bit better. Now, as I said earlier on, the 1 Series has a really nicely designed interior. It does feel very sporty and driver focused, and this is definitely something you want from your BMW. But surprisingly, considering that this is an ICE car or mild hybrid with the family friendly version, there aren't as many physical buttons as you might be expecting, and a lot of the controls are done via the infotainment system. So when it comes to physical buttons, what we have here on the center console, we've got a big rocker switch there for your gear select with a big big button for your engine start stop and your electric handbrake. We then have some shortcut buttons next to that for the front and rear demisting. We have got a button to access the 360 camera and parking sensors, depending on which pack you have added to the car. Your drive mode select, as well as a drive assist button to bring up a shortcut here on the infotainment system. We then have a little wheel there for your volume, which also does muting, and a track select button there, and also your hazard lights. And just like the X1 I had last year, I love the quality of the knurling there on that little volume rocker there. It just feels really lovely. It's only a small thing, but I really love it. And then we come to the steering wheel, which is an M Sport steering wheel. So we got the framework here at the bottom, along with a little M badge. Now on the left hand side, we have got your cruise control controls, because I haven't got radar guided fitted to this particular car. And on the right hand side, we got the little rocker switch and menu select for the driver data display, as well as your media, communication and voice controls. And then we got some flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel, and they do change the gears. And then we got your usual buttons here on the right hand side for your windows, for your adjusting your mirrors, as well as your lock and unlock and boot release. So yeah, in terms of physical buttons, they're mainly here on the center console. The buttons here on the steering wheel are very easy to use and actually pretty intuitive. So yeah, like I said, the surprising thing is, even though you've got a very driver focused and designed interior, there's not as many physical buttons as you might be expecting, because like I said, they are done via that infotainment system. So let's talk about the infotainment system and the digital driver display. Now the digital driver display is a 10.7 inch display, and the infotainment system is 10.25. Now in regards to the digital dash, it is really lovely, crisp, very clear in the information it provides to you, and it is very vibrant in the colours, and we'll go on to that in a little bit when we talk about the drive modes. And like I said, you can go through the various menus using the buttons on the right hand side of the steering wheel, and there's actually quite a lot of configuration and customization available, not just for the digital dash but also for the head-up display. So it does mean that drivers actually have quite a few options in what they have presented in front of them, so I really do like that. And then we move on to the infotainment system, which is a 10.25 inch display, and you do get things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They are wireless as well, and again, just like the digital dash, it's a really clear system. It's very vibrant in its colours, and it's also very responsive as well. It is one of the highlights of the car. Now, things like the dual zone climate control are operated via the infotainment system. For the most part, it's just kind of shortcuts. You're kind of adjusting the temperature, or you want to do the fan strength. And if you go onto the main display, you do find that the fan strength, the arrows are quite small, so it can be a bit fiddly to use when you're on the move. And then when it goes into the menus, and there are a lot of them, take your time with them, because there's a lot to configure on the car. So it really is a case of setting up before you set off. But just like the Mini Aceman I had recently, what you find is that you can either have all of the menu buttons and options right there in front of you, or it kind of goes into little kind of segments. So you can have things like media, infotainment, drive assist, things like that. So it does break them down and make it a bit easier to kind of navigate. However, I have found just kind of going through the main menu and just kind of finding what I'm after. But because there is a lot of choice and kind of configurations available to you, yeah, it's definitely a case of setup before you set off. But I love the clarity, I love the responsiveness of it, and it is just in general a really nice infotainment system. It is the latest version. I think it's iOS or iDrive 9, and the only thing that's a little bit disappointing is that you got no rocker switch for the iDrive system in order to kind of navigate it whilst you're on the move. So it's a little bit disappointing of BMW to kind of get rid of that. But when it comes to just the general sitting in the front of the 1 Series, this feels like a really lovely, special place to be. Feels very driver-centric and sporty. And something I haven't mentioned is the interior mood lighting. Now, I mentioned that we actually have real metal trim here on the dash and here on the edges, but you can see little holes in them, and that's actually where the mood lighting comes through. And I do love how it changes. You can, of course, select your own kind of interior mood lighting, but if you go through things like sport mode or expression, things like that, it does change, and it is really cool and vibrant. So that's something I really do like. It's a little quirk in the 1 Series, but it does actually work. And also, like I said, those sporty touches, like the M Sport colouring here on the dash. I do love the way that the stitching has been put through. And like I said, you've got the little M Sport badge there on the bottom of the steering wheel. So yeah, being sat here in the front of the 1 Series, it's really comfortable, really nicely designed, and it does feel surprisingly special, like I said, for this being an entry-level BMW. So on that note, I think it's time we leave the front seats and we see what it's like for rear passengers. Sat in the back of the 1 Series, as you can see, it's not the most spacious, but it is pretty comfortable, so I should be able to do a short to medium length journey and arrive at my destination feeling quite refreshed and relaxed. I would say it's more suitable for kids back here rather than adults. Now, when it comes to getting in and out of the back of the 1 Series, it is pretty easy because the doors open nice and wide and you have got grab handles there to help you out. I will mention, however, the doors themselves are quite long, so just be aware of that, and also don't bump your head on the top of the door frame because of that sloping roofline. Again, another reason why it's more suitable for kids back here rather than adults. Now, that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and what I like is that there are cutouts on the backs of the front seats, so it does mean that knee room is not too bad. I can tuck my feet underneath the driver's seat, and headroom is not too bad as somebody of my height, but if you are 6 foot tall, yes, you're definitely going to struggle, and you will struggle to get 3 adults back here. I would definitely consider this a 4-seater for adults, but you could possibly get kids sat in the middle seat. They have got a bit, however, of a transmission tunnel to navigate over. Now, speaking of kids, we have got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats, and what I love is that you've got these little plastic covers that you lift up and it exposes the ISOFIX bar, so that is actually really easy to affix a child seat. Also, the front passenger seat also comes with ISOFIX support as well, so that's actually a real bonus there. And then when it comes to cubby spaces, I'm going to say it's okay. We've got some very decent door pockets. Again, you can get a medium-sized bottle of drink in there. We got no aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats because we got the M Sport seats. However, we have got a centre armrest with a couple of cup holders with some little plastic grippers there, so they should hold your drink in place. And then when it comes to features, we have got a couple of little fan vents here, 2 USB-C charging inputs. However, I would question where you'd put your phone whilst it's charging because you've got no aeroplane style pockets. And then what we have got is a 40-20-40 split in the rear seats, so you can get longer items to come through from the boot area. However, that's an optional extra. It is a 60-40 split as standard. And then when it comes to the windows, they are of a really nice size and shape. They are tinted as well on this particular car, and they do open all the way down. But I will say, because the doors are quite large, there is actually a separate section there where a window is fixed in place. So again, just be aware of that, because that could be a little bit tricky if perhaps you're in, say, a tight multi-storey car park. And then, yeah, that's about it here in the back of the 1 Series. There's not a huge amount of features. Cubby spaces, like I said, are a little bit limited because you haven't got your aeroplane style pockets, and space is at a premium. So I would definitely recommend the 1 Series for those with young kids or perhaps looking to kind of start a family soon. But yeah, when you've got adults, I would consider the 1 Series to be a 4-seater. But even then, if they're tall adults, yeah, they're not going to be the most comfortable. And on that note, I think it's time that we leave the rear seats of the 1 Series and we see what the boot is like. Opening the boot of the 1 Series presents you with 300 litres of space, which in this segment against its rivals is actually pretty poor. Now, the reason for that is because this version of the 1 Series is a mild hybrid, so all the hybrid gubbins are situated underneath the boot floor. Now, if you went for the hot hatch version of the 1 Series, the M135, you'd actually have 380 litres of boot capacity, which is much more competitive. So you do sacrifice 80 litres in order to get the family-friendly version. Now, when you got the boot open, you are greeted with a nice wide square load area. The boot lip itself is actually not too high, so it could be actually ideal for small dogs to jump in and out of, and you could possibly be able to load something like a wheelchair or a mobility scooter. I'll also mention there's hardly any boot lip to navigate over, which is a bonus. I think you might struggle to get a large suitcase in here, but you could definitely get a couple of carry-ons or a few weekend bags, and it should be okay for a week's shopping. Now, when it comes to features, I will say there's a couple of them, but I was surprised that there's no 12-volt socket or tethering hooks. But what we have got is a little bit of netting on the right-hand side. We have got some shopping hooks here, which are very handy. There is a little space here on the side, and that's for your tyre puncture repair kit. And then we have got a little bit of extra underfloor storage. Essentially, you would have a lot more if you go for the hot hatch version. So that is a little bit handy if you want to perhaps hide some items away and not have anyone see it. Now, unfortunately, it does mean, because we got that smaller boot, you can't put the parcel shelf underneath the boot floor. So when it comes to putting the seats down, you can either remove this and then put them down, or you do it from the sides. But the bonus is you have an almost completely flat load area. So at least that's something if you do want to load any large bulky items into the back of your 1 Series. So yeah, on paper, it's not the most capacious of boots, especially when compared to its rivals, but it has got some features. And like I said, you've got a little bit of underfloor storage. And I do love the fact that the boot lip itself is quite low. So that is something. So yeah, just like a typical 1 Series, there is that kind of limitation when it comes to practicality in the boot and rear passenger space. But what I think we should do is get the boot down and take the 1 Series on the road and see if it excels there. Oh, I will mention the power tailgate. It's an optional extra. So once you start driving the 1 Series, first impressions are very positive. Now, it's an easy and comfortable car to drive, but you can feel that sporty setup. But the other thing as well is, like the Mini Aceman I drove recently, it doesn't take too long to realise that this is going to be a very rewarding car to drive. If you put the effort in, you will reap the rewards. And when it comes to visibility, I will say it's actually pretty good all round. Now, considering that, yes, this is a relatively small family hatchback and you do sit really low, I've got a really good view of the road ahead. I will also add, I love the driving position. I do feel like I'm low down in a hot hatch. Now, one thing I will mention is that you can't judge where the front of the car is, because that bonnet does slope away, not unlike an EV. But as standard, you do get front and rear parking sensors and a reversing camera. And I will mention that the clarity of the camera on screen is really lovely, especially during the day, but it's not that noisy at night either. Now, the A-pillars are quite thick and chunky, but surprisingly, I've not found myself looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are of a lovely shape and size, and I have got blind spot monitoring as standard. That was a genuine surprise, but they are of a lovely shape, and they definitely help me when I'm been on the motorway. And then when I look over my shoulder, I do find there's a relatively thick C-pillar, but it's not creating too much of an issue because I have got that blind spot monitoring as well. And then rear visibility, I will say, is actually very good. I've got a nice big screen. There's no real obstruction from the rear headrests. And something that's quite unique to kind of add, the rear wiper is surprisingly large. It does clear quite a massive area of that rear window, so that is a bonus, particularly on a wet and rainy day, because it does kick up a lot of spray. So yeah, when it comes to all-round visibility and first impressions when you start driving the 1 Series, yeah, it is really positive. It is comfortable, but in a kind of sporty way. But like I said, it doesn't take too long to kind of realise that this car, yeah, it's going to be something special when it comes to handling. Now, when it comes to trim levels in the 1 Series range, it's really lovely and simple because there are 2 to choose from. You've essentially got the family-friendly version, which is what I've got here, or the sporty hot hatch version. So the family-friendly version is called the 120 and the hot hatch the M135. Now, you're probably thinking, hold on, Dave, you're missing a digit there, you're missing the eye. Well, this is something that BMW have recently started to do. They're taking the eye away because essentially it is a way of identifying their electric cars. So if you're after an electric BMW, the eyes have it. So this is the 120, and like I said, if you want the hot hatch, there's the M135. And I can't really give you any kind of preferences because it depends on the type of 1 Series you want. The only thing I'll say is that when you are looking at the family friendly version, just be careful of the option packs because the price does start to rise, and you don't really want a car like this going over £40,000 because that's when you jump into the higher road tax bracket. That is kind of a benchmark price to try and keep it under. But what I will do is I will put everything that's on this particular car in the description below. It is around £42,500, so yeah, it is over the 40k. But I'll also put a description down of what I would do if I was going to go and pick a 1 Series and keep it under 40k. I will put that in the description below as well. But that's essentially it. There are 2 trim levels to choose from: family friendly and hot hatch. Now, when it comes to powering the 1 Series, just like the trim levels, it's really lovely and simple because there are 2 engines available: a family-friendly engine and a performance hot hatch engine. And I have experienced these engines before in cars from BMW in Mini last year when I had the Mini Countryman and the X1 M135i, and I did say that correctly because it did have an I in its title, and you can pretty much guess which engine was with which car. So I have got the family-friendly engine in this 1 Series. It is a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol unit, and it sends its power through a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. Remember, there's no manual available, and that goes through to the front wheels. Now, if you want to go for the hot hatch version of the 1 Series, then the engine upgrades to a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol unit, and again, that sends its power through a 7-speed DCT, but that goes down to all 4 wheels, so you get better performance and traction. Now, I am going to put everything on screen now for you so you can compare those 2 engines. So if you do go for the 1.5 litre, which is what I've got here, you get 168 brake horsepower and 280 Newton meters of torque, and that gives you a 0 to 62 time of around 7.8 seconds, which I actually think is pretty impressive and brisk for this type of car. Now, I will mention with the 1.5 litre, it is a mild hybrid, so it's not a full hybrid like a Toyota Corolla, but when I drove the Countryman last year, I was very impressed by it. Now, when it comes to economy, BMW say with this specific car, with all the options fitted to it, I should be able to achieve, on a combined WLTP cycle, 50.4 miles per gallon, which actually sounds pretty impressive again for a mild hybrid. But I'm sorry, BMW, I don't believe you, because when I drove the 1 Series back from Farnborough, which is where BMW HQ is, all the way up to Scunthorpe, where I live, which is about 200 miles, I averaged 55.7 mpg, and I was really impressed by that. And also, I was driving at 70 miles per hour, I had cruise control on, I was just letting the car do its thing. So to achieve that on a motorway run, yeah, I'm really impressed by that. And also with the engine, excuse me, it is actually a really lovely engine. It's got a lot of character to it. You've got that 3-cylinder thrum. It's got a lot of pull as well from the low end. And yeah, it's just a really lovely engine. The only thing I'll say is, in conjunction with the DCT, for everyday driving, you'll have no issues whatsoever. It's nice, smooth transitions when it goes through the gears. And the only time you really kind of, I don't know, kind of notice it's a dual clutch is when you're at a standstill and you want to pull away. There is a bit of hesitation there. And also when you're kind of coming to a complete stop and you want to put it into reverse, again, there's a bit of hesitation. But I will say though, when you are driving along and you put it into sport mode, because there is a sport mode with the gearbox, it is really short and snappy shifts. It really is responsive, and you can use the flappy paddles on the back of this steering wheel, which is a bonus. And I mean, driving along now, I'm going to slow down a bit. There's no one behind me. So 30 miles an hour, I'm going to put my foot down. Okay, that wasn't too bad. There was a little bit of hesitation there, but you got that nice kind of raspy 3-cylinder thrum come through into the cabin. So I'm going to put it into sport mode. So slow down again. So 30 miles an hour, foot down. Yeah, that was actually much quicker and far more responsive and engaging. So it's great to know that you have got that along with the flappy paddles if you want to have a bit of fun with the gearbox. And we'll talk about drive modes in a second, because sport mode, yeah, is definitely something special. Now, what about the 1 Series ride and refinement? So with this being a BMW, you know pretty much from the outset that this is going to be a firm ride. It's going to be a sporty car in its setup, and yeah, it pretty much delivers. As you can see, I am wobbling about, but it's not uncomfortable. It does deal with the bumps and imperfections in a really mature way, just like the Mini Aceman I reviewed recently. And yes, you can see me moving around, but these seats are really comfortable. They do hold me in place, and they take a lot of the vibration away from the outside, so that is a real bonus there. For day-to-day driving, you shouldn't have any issues at all in the 1 Series. And actually, when you get up to speed, say 60-70 miles per hour, the car does settle down, so that is a bonus. But the only thing I'll say is every so often, if you're on the motorway and you're going at 70 and you come across those little kind of divots that are on the tarmac, you can get a bit of a boom and a jolt coming into the cabin. So that is just something to be aware of there. But for everyday driving, like I said, in the 1 Series, you shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. It's a really nice car. Yes, it is firm, but it's not uncomfortable. I've had no issues in regards to the ride. And like I said, when you're on the motorway, just every once in a while, yes, you are going to get a boom and a jolt come through into the cabin. So just be aware of that. But if you are going for a BMW, you're pretty much going to expect that. And then when it comes to refinement, I'm actually very impressed as well. The main intrusion into the cabin is tyre roar. That's about it. And yes, when you put your foot down, you do get some of that engine note come through, as you heard earlier, but it is that really nice, characterful 3-cylinder thrum. And really, in regards to wind noise, there's hardly anything coming from the A-pillar or the wing mirrors, so that is an actual plus. So really, just road noise is the main intrusion, but you can spec a Harman Kardon stereo in your 1 Series, and I have got it here, and it is a peach of a sound system. It is really lovely. It just takes away any of that exterior noise coming into the cabin, and it has got a really lovely, crisp, clear sound to it. And I do recommend you tick that box on the options list, because I definitely will if I was speccing my own 1 Series. So yeah, when it comes to ride and refinement, yes, it is firm, but it's not uncomfortable. But just be aware that every once in a while you might get a bit of a boom and a shock come through into the cabin. But that's really about it. Now, when it comes to drive modes in the 1 Series, just like Mini with their experiences, there are more than the usual 3 that you get to choose from. If anything, dare I say, you might have a bit too much choice. Now, firstly, to operate it, you've got to go onto the button here on the center console, and it brings it up on the screen. So I'm just going to kind of name them so you know what's available. So you've got personal, sport, efficient, expressive, relax, digital, and silent. And basically all of them changed kind of the interior of the car. A couple of them do change actually how the car behaves, mainly efficient and sport. But yeah, you kind of go through each one of these and it gives you like a different kind of experience. If you go with digital art, it turns all the interior colors purple. You can actually have somebody kind of give you a little kind of narrative of their art and what it means and how it's kind of expressive to them. And BMW, you have got things like efficient, which is kind of your eco mode, so it kind of pulls the power away. Again, you get the interior kind of bathed in a teal lighting. But then you have sport. Now, I will mention with all of these, it does change things like the digital dash and what's on the main infotainment screen. But when you put it, there we go, into sport, you find that you get the 3 M colours here on the screen. And it's kind of put onto like a mountainous region, so it's a really lovely image on the infotainment system. You have got a change then as well to the digital dash and also the head-up display. The car itself has gone firmer because I have got the M adaptive suspension fitted to this car, so the ride is firmer. The steering is heavier and more weighty, and also I've got more response from the accelerator pedal, and it is just an absolute joy, considering this has got a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder. It's got 168 brake horsepower. It just transforms the car. It turns it into a warm or a lukewarm hot hatch. Okay, that doesn't make sense. It turns it into, though, a little hot hatch, and it's just an absolute joy to drive. I do love the drive modes in here, and they do change, like I said, the character of the car. If you put it into silent, everything goes dark. It basically, you get a speedometer on the screen and that's it. You can go into expressive, so all the colours kind of change on the interior mood light. I will say with the sport mode engage, you do get the M Sport colours here on the mood lighting, which is really cool. And yeah, it's something that you will spend time just going through them and just seeing how it affects your mood and how it affects the way that you drive. But with sport, yeah, it does transform the 1 Series into a bit of a hooligan. And this isn't even the hot hatch version. That's absolutely bonkers. The only thing I will say, when you do put it into sport mode, is that the gearbox still remains in normal drive mode. So you have to just give that a bit of a flick, and that way you can, you know, get all the benefits of that sporty BMW drive. So what about the 120's handling? Well, I'm driving along now in personal mode, which is kind of normal mode, and it is an absolute joy to drive. Now, firstly, the steering wheel itself is a really nice size and thickness. It doesn't feel too chunky, and I know that is a trait of BMWs, but it does feel really lovely in my hand, and I do love the quality of the leather surrounding it, and also the stitching as well. It's not actually kind of digging into my thumbs. But yeah, for day-to-day driving, when it comes to the handling of the 1 Series, it is really impressive. You do feel connected to the car when you chuck it in, and there's a little bit of roll and lean, but it does actually give you a bit of confidence to kind of push it even further. In fact, we can now just go straight into sport mode, put it into the sport gearbox setting, and away we go. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the steering does have more weight in it. The suspension does firm up as well, and the response under my right foot for the accelerator is sharper, but bloody hell, this thing feels like a hot hatch. I mean, there's part of me thinking, why do I need the M135? Oh my God, this is so rewarding. I've got feedback, I've got feel, I know what the car is doing. And you just chuck it in, and you can just feel everything that's going on underneath you. It is actually a genuinely fun car to drive. I am really impressed by this. I do love that, and of course with the kind of price of the car, yes, you're kind of paying that little bit extra, so you have got those adjustments that will come when you put it into sport mode. Yeah, this is giving me proper pure driving pleasure, which is something I really am impressed with. And got a little bit of a right and a left turn here we go. Oh, there's me water bottle, and there's me left, there we go. Oh man, yeah, that is really, really impressive. I'm massively impressed with this 1 Series, with this 120. It feels like a little hot hatch. Genuinely, genuinely fun to drive. wow. So with my time in the 1 Series, what have been some of the highlights and some of the little niggles I need to let you guys know about? Well, highlights, definitely the frugality of the 1 Series. I was really impressed with the MPG I was able to achieve, and also I reckon in regards to total range, what you can get out of the car. So it's got a 49 litre fuel tank, and when I was driving back from Farnborough, it was giving me the impression that I was going to be able to achieve 550, possibly up to 600 miles on a full tank, which is really impressive for this type of car. Of course, when you start driving around town and doing your daily commute, it is going to get reduced because you're using the engine in more of a kind of start-stop way. So that's just something to be aware of there, but I was really impressed by that. And then you got things like the standard levels of equipment for a BMW. I was again very impressed by that. And when it comes to the safety systems on the car, they're not intrusive at all. When you got things like lane keep assist, it doesn't tug and pull on the wheel. You just get a gentle reminder to like stay in your lane. The only safety system that is intrusive is when you go a mile an hour over the speed limit, and it does give you a inaudible warning, and you get a kind of a whop, whop, whop coming into the cabin. And really, that's not that bad. I mean, it's not like, say, Hyundai Group cars where you get a loud beep. So that's something I do like. And the only other niggle I've come across here in the 1 Series this week has been a build quality issue. There is, I don't know if you can hear it, but there is a rattle in the cabin, and it's not coming from here. It's coming from up there. It's coming from the sunroof. And I've tried opening it and closing it and trying to kind of, I don't know, just try and see if it will kind of work itself out. But unfortunately it hasn't. So that's been a little bit disappointing. Now, it's probably an isolated thing and it's only with this car, but it is something that would make me want to perhaps untick the box for that sunroof. But also, in regards to kind of this type of car, I would want to keep it under 40k. So options like the sunroof, I'd probably live without, which is no bad thing. And then things like the 40-20-40 seats in the rear, I am a bit disappointed that they are an optional extra. I would have expected them to be standard. And then things, yeah, like the power tailgate as well. So it's great that there is some elements of value for money in the 1 Series, but in typical BMW fashion, yes, if you want to get all the toys, you've got to pay for them. But other than that, yeah, I've been really impressed with the frugality and the range of the car. I do just really love the 1 Series all round, and just the car itself has been a highlight. And you know what, on that note, I think it's time we go to the conclusion. So, what are my thoughts on the BMW 1 Series 120? Well, at the beginning of this review, I had 2 questions to ask. Number 1, what is the car like? And number 2, does it still deliver pure driving pleasure? Even though, just like the rest of its competitors in this segment, it's front wheel drive. So, the car. I absolutely love it. I am really impressed by it. It rides very well, even though it is a sporty hatchback. It handles beautifully, and I really love the looks, and I love that Thundernight metallic paint. Of course, it's not all perfect. When it comes to practicality, rear passenger space, it is lagging behind some of its rivals, and this does tend to be a bit of a 1 Series trait. So it is something that you might expect if you are looking at this car, particularly if you have owned a 1 Series in the past. Also, I've been really impressed with the frugality of this 120 with that 1.53 cylinder. It is a peach of an engine. However, engine choices are limited on this car. So if you are after a plug-in hybrid, if you are after a diesel, you've got to look elsewhere. If you want a manual gearbox, which other brands do still offer, again, you've got to go elsewhere. So you are, in some respects, quite limited to what you have on offer when compared to its rivals. But if I was personally looking to get a premium, small-ish family hatchback, I would probably be looking at the 1 Series first. I think then the A3, and possibly the A-Class after that. I'm not quite sure if I'd actually put the Golf ahead of the A-Class. Unfortunately, I've not been able to work with Mercedes apart from having one of their pickup trucks many moons ago, so it's difficult to kind of judge what an A-Class is like, but hopefully, you never know, in the future I might have Mercedes on the channel. But I am really impressed with the 1 Series. It feels very sporty, it feels special as well. I do feel like this is actually a much more expensive car than what it actually is, and yeah, it's a brilliant car to drive, but just BMW, work on the practicality. That's it, that's the main thing. So yeah, the 1 Series, great looking car, love the colour of the paint, love how it drives and it handles, and it's frugal also. What is not to like? Apart from the lack of practicality in boot space. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of this, the new BMW 1 Series 120. And of course, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. Now, if you've got any questions about the 1 Series and my time with it, please put them down in the comment section below and I will do my utmost to answer them. Don't forget as well to follow on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter for additional content. I've just driven past an M135 in this Thundernight colour, so that is actually really cool, and I'll catch you all in the next video. I'm actually going to turn around and see him. So yeah, everyone, have yourself a great day and I'll catch you all in the next video. So take care everybody, and bye bye.